Thank you, Jeff. On the contrary, it's sunset now. We're going to lose this glare in about 15 minutes. Much gratitude to Mobilize, to you and Mobilize News for bringing the front line to the world. So, what we're going to talk. This is a series of rights of nature. So, on November 5th, 2015, a dam. There was a dam break. It was a mining dam, full of residue, toxic residue, chromo, lead, arsenic, lots of heavy metals. It made it on one of these mountains right near here. It made it through villages, destroyed the villages, killed those human casualties. And then it made it to the Rio Doce. Rio Doce means sweet river. So it was a very important river and a fairly well preserved river. It was also part of the Krenak indigenous nation. And there was devastation for 826 kilometers. The mouth of the river, when it reached there, went another 250 or 300, and it damaged one of Brazil's only coral reefs on our Atlantic coast. There was tidal waves. It took 7 days to reach the mouth of the river. So it was very slow, okay? In some places, before it reached the river, as it hit side of a mountain or maybe a church or a school, they reported 30-meter waves. It was a horrendous event. Destroyed everything in its path. 60 million cubic meters. 60 million. To give an idea of the dimension, that's 54,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. It wasn't an accident. Brazil has no earthquakes. We're not on no fault line. And I saw the bigger picture because I knew no international news, but the local news was talking it down. And it was also protecting the mining companies. Oh, only 20. It was 19. That one, it was 19 and one pregnant lady, so that makes 20. Human life, that's all they would talk about. They would not talk about the environment, the other forms of life on that stretch. Important and vital for the Atlantic rainforest, which is a very important environment, which was at the basin of that river. Okay. Weeks went by, and nothing, no press. Not even Oxfam, not even relief agencies. And nothing. It was very strange. Then a lawyer related to Polly Higgins, one of the greatest, she created a great movement, rights for nature movement. She came and visited me. And I had heard, when I laid out everything on the table for her, she was there to defend me. And she did just that. She got there just in time. Because when I heard that National Geographic was going to visit the scene and film, I thought they were going to do a documentary. And I'm a fan of National Geographic ever since I'm young. Those yellow margin magazines, perhaps it's the reason I do what I do today. They influenced me. But she said to me, "Did you show all this to National Geographic?" And I said, "No." And I volunteered. I would be their interpreter. I would go. I would help them with the documentary to show the world what happened. She goes, do you know who owns National Geographic? Well, I had no idea. And she said the name of a press Mongol titan, billionaire, that owns a lot, if not most, of the world's press. So that was the reason. She said, you are lucky that you as an activist did not go and didn't participate. And I said, wow. Then, we were getting information. The three companies involved, two were Brazilian, one Brazilian multinational, one Brazilian domestic, and another one was an Australian multinational mining giant responsible for this. And home base Australia. I will say that the Mongol she was talking about is Australian, okay? But he has offices in London and Sydney, in Australia, and in New York. So what did I do? I found out that this crew from National Geographic was staying at my friend's hotel. And when they were there, they had already left. So I went to my friend, I was honest with him, I'm saying, I'm actually spying. Can you give me the phone records of the National Geographic people that were here? He said, oh, my brother, they use cellular phones. And I said, describe them to me. And he said, I said, well, were they from Europe? Were they from Australia? What kind of accent did they have? He said, no, they were Brazilian. They were from Sao Paulo. So we came to the conclusion that they were not shooting a documentary. What National Geographic did was probably hire a crew from Sao Paulo to come very quickly to the scene and for analysis so their lawyers can protect them future lawsuits and tribunals, et cetera, et cetera. It was a crisis control mission. Okay? And the dots started to connect. I was always suspicious because this city that you see behind me, Ouro Preto, was El Dorado and is still El Dorado. From this city and the sister city is where the Portuguese found a tremendous amount of gold deposits. And it was extracted by many different Europeans, not just the Portuguese. It was just a bonanza, okay? And it's actually, this city was over 3 times bigger than New York in the day, because you can imagine. And it's the gold that was extracted from here is what financed, because the English were here also, would finance the Industrial Revolution, built the first factories in Birmingham, perhaps I think Manchester also, but it gave impetus to the Industrial Revolution. And there's still gold here. The thing is that this city now is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So there's no permits, it's prohibited. And people pirate it and this and that, but nothing like what I imagine someone or a company or companies would go to do. What happened here was not just ecocide. It was not just genocide. We had to invent a word. We put the 2 words together, eco-genocide, and we registered it, eco-genocide. And it was on a global scale. It was on a global scale. I saw a bigger picture. I saw more than the human casualties. Because as an environmentalist, you can see that, you understand that everything is interconnected. And then I thought about the fish. The fish were suffocating. The fish, the frogs, everything, all species were destroyed, were devastated and killed. The river was killed. The river was dead. And what I had had predicted is that diseases were to come soon. Because it's common sense, if the frog and the mosquitoes are common predators of the mosquitoes, the frogs and the fish are common predators of the mosquito, then it was obvious that we were going to have a lot of waterborne diseases within weeks, probably. But it was worse than what I thought. Within weeks, yellow fever, which had been eradicated, at least in this region, the heart of Brazil, came back. Dengue fever came with multiple variants that had never existed before. René Gahé, it's another disease. Chikungunya, another disease that leaves some people paralyzed after. And then a baby was born. And the baby obviously had some sort of neurological deficiency and born with a cone head. And the universities and the doctors fairly quickly diagnosed it, of course, because of the deformality to Zika virus. Okay? It didn't take long, very short period, Zika virus went global, spread throughout the world. So this is eco-genocide on a global scale without any type of exaggeration. Okay? Now, this region is so rich in gold that it financed the Industrial Revolution, the lifestyle of Europe and America and Australia. It all started here. And the river has gold. So I also predicted that it may have been intentional for these companies. And it was based on a little knowledge I have about economy and some knowledge I have about geopolitics. I thought, it's impossible. There's no steel concrete in this dam. It's just packed mud, okay? It was almost like it was made to break. And sure enough, it broke. And sure enough, about a year later, the first I said they're going to use the excuse of having to clean the river, of having to pay too many fines. It's just so many population. It's just so much. They can't go bankrupt. They're too good, too big to fail. The Australian company immediately pulled out to save their asses, but the Brazilian multinational, they got a permit. Actually, it was a company named Phoenix, but it's probably a front company. I don't know. I can't prove it. And sure enough, I said that they were going to start using the machinery, the excuse that they found gold in the river so they could start extracting gold for geopolitical and economic reasons. Remember, this is 2015. But I knew that since 20 years back, the Saudis have been, America got off the gold standard in 71, and it's been doing quantitative easing ever since. We had the 2008 Great Recession that affected us too, affected the whole world. And it's just unsustainable. Paper money is unsustainable. So anyways, I knew from 20 years back, even the Chinese were doing propaganda with posters, us, the CCP. We want our people to understand that we are a capitalist experiment, but just an experiment. We want you to know that we are protecting our yuan, our currency, backed by gold. So they've been buying gold for a long time. Russia started, also knew about this, but I'm not really sure. They're already pegged to the gold, and the Saudis, and I knew there was going to be a lot of demand for gold. So I suspect that this was one of the reasons for this crime, because it's a crime. Okay? Then, on January 25th, 2019, I'm hollering and screaming because Paula Higgins died just a couple weeks after she started advising me on this. And years went by. But 2017, yet another dam break. Okay? This time it was 11,700 cubic meters. Okay? So that's less. That's small compared to the first one was 60 million cubic meters, 54,000 Olympic pools. Small one, but that one killed more people. The official estimates from the companies, it's not United Nations, it's not, they left people buried there, and everyone knows that. The firemen know that, the government knows that, and they say 272. But it also poisoned 2 rivers, although not so much environmental damage as the first one. Okay. After that one broke, things started to happen. El País, a very progressive journal from Spain, they called me and they gave an interview. And almost immediately after, the French NGO, the same as Doctors Without Borders and Journalists Without Borders, the Engineers Without Borders came to interview me to find out what's going on in Brazil with these dams. And I told them all of the above, everything that I've just finished saying now. And they didn't believe it. They were young and didn't know too much about economy, too much about, they didn't believe that, that people can get together, corporations will do this for profits. They were young and innocent. And I told them, you know, gold is, it's not only just for the gold standard. Gold is not even from this planet. Did you know that gold came to this planet with asteroid showers? And they looked on Google immediately because they were astounded at these 2 dam breaks. But I was saying everything the universities and the other people they were interviewing was saying, except that gold part that, you know, a mining engineer doesn't understand too much about economy. I don't understand too much about economy, but it's just common sense. But then what happened was that it was most probably, at least the first one, I can almost swear to that from what I have. But the second one may have been an accident, but the first one wasn't. The gold was in the Rio Doce. Okay? So these young engineers, they interviewed me. And by that time, like I said, they had already given licenses for gold exploration. And so that's the story. And why such a somber story on this series of Right to Nature? Is because I had experience and I wanted rights to nature to work for us. But unfortunately, first of all, it was something of global scale. Second of all, if Polly Higgins would have lived, we may have rights of nature in the laws, at least in these 2 municipalities here and because there's hundreds. This is called Minas Gerais state. Minas Gerais means general mines in general. So you know how the state is even called because it has so many mines. There's hundreds of these that we're expecting that are still going to break. Okay? And you may not hear about it in the news. So, we would have laws by now in place. And the other reason is because the environment has no boundaries. Anyone who saw the series, the first series of Right to Nature, saw these beautiful pictures of the North Atlantic, Newfoundland, serene, scenic. It's our ocean. But everything is connected. Air pollution crosses borders. Rivers, our rivers in the south here, they flow in the Atlantic Ocean. And they make it up to Greenland. due to the Gulf Stream. So we all got to unite in this effort, and I think that rights to nature is fantastic solution that gives me much hope. Let's talk about hope. I'm going to read this because it's somebody else's speech and somebody else's article, and I don't want to misquote, okay? So just let me grab something so I can read. Hope. I know enough about social engineering, neurolinguistic programming, and how governments and corporations use word manipulation to confuse and create divisiveness within its citizenry. They want ignorance within the masses so the minority elite can continue the illusion that all is right and cool. With a system that is insane, cruel, and corrupt. I worked and studied with the Jesuits, and I learned at an early age all about the above. The Jesuits had probably, till to this day, the world's most expansive intelligence network. You know, the Vatican, the popes would send them off with the invaders. Conquistadors are called, but I call them invaders, to colonize. And they were witness to indigenous slaughtering, to the rats of slavery. But their mission was control through evangelism or Christianity. For example, here in Brazil, a Jesuit botanist would observe how and with what plant the indigenous would cure an illness. So he would design the plant or the flower or the bark of a tree. And he would send a book. That book would reach Rome, would reach the Vatican with samples. And it would be studied for medicine in Europe. Others would locate and map out where gold existed, for example. So the Jesuits originated as a nasty bunch of, let's say, empire building or government stooges. But my mentors were rebels, they were renegades. And through them in the war refugee camps of Central America, I learned how the world really worked. So the word hope in Portuguese, and maybe a couple other of the Romantic languages, at least in Spanish, is esperanza. Espera means wait. So I asked my favorite ex-priest mentor once, why is the Anglo-Saxon version of this word so different? This particular mentor was a great conscious humanitarian, lots of empathy. He was actually a political prisoner, jailed for almost 20 years by a dictatorship. He was genius, wise, and very careful about his teachings. He saw my emotion as a young man, and he was very slow to explain to me exactly all the atrocities and how this system doesn't work. He once even told me that as a young man that I was there were certain teens that would not prefer to wait because he was worried about my emotions, as I said. So when he answered me, he hesitated. At times, like priests and monks do, they challenge you, and I thought that was his delayed reaction. But it wasn't. I think that since he spoke so many languages, it was when you speak different languages, it happens to me sometimes, your native language makes a shift from one part of your brain to another part of your brain, and there is a delay for some people. One's native language through the thought process does that. By the way, English is not my native language, so my apologies for any of my delays or diction errors. I also have dyslexia, so that's a struggle, but back to this brother. He knew that I would become an activist one day. So he asked me if my question was a trick one. It wasn't. I was just skeptical due to what I had learned already from him about critical thinking and that one must question everything. So he told me, yes, hope means wait, but that because of its origin, it also meant to expand. Speza, he said, means win, to act, and positive things to come. Well, to me, any word with double meaning, especially of empirical or religious origin, I don't use. I study linguistics, and I know that words have power. In fact, after that lesson from Padre Luis was his name, I don't know, maybe about 40 years ago, I totally eliminated that word from my vocabulary. Never used it. But a few weeks ago, something wonderful happened. Strip mining has intensified for some reason after the war here. And everyone, all my colleagues, are calling me with reports, dear friends and activists. Everyone was depressed a few weeks ago, including me, because more mining companies are coming in all the time. Let me try to make an analogy. When these two dams broke, the death and destruction, to see it with your own eyes, talk to the victims, fish suffocating, horse and cattle and animals stuck in the mud. And as environmentalists, we know that entire ecosystems dying will cause a chain reaction of many more deaths for maybe hundreds of years. That experience is like a September 11th event, or even a Pearl Harbor. Because make no mistake, what's happening here now, and I learned with the Engineers Without Borders that's happening around the world, will kill more human life than World War I and World War II put together. So it's frustrating at times, and sometimes one wants to quit. But everything changed after the following speech from Tom Lindsay. It lifted me up, and I translated it to my friends here, and it did the same to them. And I want to publicly express my gratitude to him, Tom Lindsay, and feel that it merits sharing with you all also. Thomas was introduced, and his host said that it was a time for hope. Of course, this threw me off because there was that dreadful word again that I don't like. I almost didn't continue watching. But since we all should learn more about rights of nature, I listened. Thomas got up to the podium and said, "When I was introduced, my friend said that it was a time for hope. I disagree slightly from that. I think it's time to actually give up on hope." Well, that captured my attention. He went on and said, "Our folks in Pennsylvania have given up hope that our legislators will help them, that the courts will help them, that the environmental groups will help them, or that the state agencies will help them. Instead, they've turned to the same place that the abolitionists and the suffrage turned. The same place as the 1890s popular farmers and American revolutionaries turned, to themselves and to each other." The room filled with applause. He then continued, "Giving up hope that someone will save them is a beginning, not an end." More applause. Thomas went on to read an article. It was from Eric or Derek Jensen. I apologize for not knowing the name of the author. Wrote, and it was called Beyond Hope. And I quote, "A wonderful thing happens when you give up on hope, which is that you realize that you never needed it in the first place." Now he was speaking my language. You realize that giving up on hope didn't kill you. It didn't even make you less effective. It makes you more effective because you cease to rely on someone else to solve a problem. You see hoping your problems will somehow get solved by some magical God, the Great Mother, the Sierra Club, courageous tree sitters, I believe he said, the brave salmon, or even Earth herself. I included herself here. When you just begin doing whatever it takes to solve problems yourself, when you give up on hope, something even better happens than that. It doesn't kill you. That it does kill you. You die. So what? And there is a wonderful thing about being dead. And that's that those in power can't really touch you anymore. More applause. Not through promises, not through threats, nor violence itself. When you give up on hope, you turn away from fear, and when you quit relying on hope and instead begin to protect the people, places, and things you love, you become very dangerous indeed to those in power. More applause. And I had a flashback, and it reminded me of Padre, my mentor, Padre Luis. Okay? Because he was murdered. In case you're wondering, Jensen writes, giving up hope can be a very good thing. Some stood in ovation, and I got a burst of energy and started to translate this article and Thomas's speech for all my friends here. So get this. A couple weeks ago, after watching the first of this Mobilized Rights of Nature series, it was a beautiful scenic image, as I said, of the North Atlantic Ocean. Hearing them talk about the way that Rights of Nature is advancing for the first time in 30 plus years as a frontline activist, I have hope now. And I'll tell you why. Rights of Nature means that any member of the natural world can be a plaintiff in a court of law. I mean, stop and really think about this like I did, because you'll enjoy a blissful aha moment. It was just tremendous insight when I really, really thought about this. Okay? See, we have 7+ billion of humans on Earth, right? But I thought to myself, wow, there are many more other living beings in nature than humans. In fact, in the series, they talked about a case that a salmon was the plaintiff. And I thought that was so cool. I started following that case. So I did a census, so to speak. And did you all know that there are about 3.5 trillion fish in the planet's oceans and rivers? Birds, 430 billion. Then I thought about soil. Soil is uncalculable. Universe. It's infinite. With her fungi, intelligent fungi, bacteria and lovely worms and bugs, and all the rest. Rights of Nature is, in my humble opinion, going to be the breakthrough we needed to not quit. Rights of Nature already exist in countries like Ecuador, Panama, a couple Mexican states, Bolivia, Chile is going into the Constitution, but it's still pending. It's not official yet. And by the way, I'm not sure if you noticed, but every time I describe any of the flora, fauna, or ecosystems above, I refer to all in the feminine. Okay? And that's because here and in the countries above, we refer all nature as mother. The Krenak tribe lost their mother. It was so much sorrow. It was incredible and very sad scene. It's their mother ran through their territory. But since James Lovelock wrote The Theory of Gaia, I'm sure that the great approximate 36 city governments in the U.S. and an array of European municipalities most likely believe and love Gaia and consider her mother also, at least in the feminine sense. Brothers and sisters, it's really happening. And it's the most revolutionary process I've witnessed since the civil rights movement. So thanks to Padre Luis and Thomas Lindsay, for the first time in my life, I have hope. Padre Luis, or Thomas's version, doesn't matter. Maybe I don't need to call it hope. I like faith. I now have renewed faith that I will leave this life and place in better shape than it is today. You know, I told my kids years ago that I didn't want grandkids. That was a very painful conversation for me and them and for my wife. I changed my mind. You know, I began as an anti-war peace activist with Padre Luis in a war refugee camp. Then I became an environmental activist. Then I was invited to participate in a human rights group that now enjoys a chair, for whatever it's worth, in the UN Human Rights Council. When I was asked to do human rights, as I was being vetted, I said that I was into forest and river preservation, not human rights. But the great humanitarians that were by me, it was two medical doctors. One was Brazilian, and he said to me, he told me, but you are human rights. I'm a doctor, and I'm with you in the River Basin Committee. I serve with you on the committee. He told me most of the cases that he treated come from waterborne diseases or polluted rivers. That clean water is a human right. So he sold me. This man was such a humanitarian. Dr. Porto is his name. I lost him to COVID because he didn't stop working, saving people. Now here I am doing a program for nature rights. Every environment is connected. Everything in the natural world is as much as a social being as humans, all within her. Pachamama feels pain as we humans feel pain. So whether it's give up hope or believe in hope, doesn't matter. What we must always do is keep the faith. Thank you all for fighting the good fight. Please join the Rights of Nature movement, because I know that that is what's going to create progress. First time in my life that I see progress, because the species are being protected by law. So now is when we can make some headway. Thank you very much.